Oh yeah, it is one of my favorite things to keep on doing throughout the course of the summer. Pissing off one team's fan base and trying to appease the other. Yeah, I know, a lot of Edmonton Oilers fans generally don't seem to vibe with the content that we create here, especially since a lot of it is from a Vancouver point of view, but that is going to continue here. And I am fully willing to accept whatever punishment comes my way because of it. Because today, we are talking about this guy, the Nuge, one of the NHL's most under-the-radar 100-point scorers in the past few years, at 32 years old, 6'1", 192, and asking whether or not the Nuge could be a potential option for Vancouver. Now, the reason we are making this commentary is because of Steven Rodgett's article from yesterday talking about which true top six centers the Vancouver Canucks can still trade for this offseason. Big shout out over to the folks on Canucks Army, as always, for providing content in what is being labeled as the dog days of summer. I mean, that's exactly what it is, isn't it? It's July 12th over here, man. There is nothing to talk about. But let's talk about the Nuge, go over him as a hockey player, go over his profile. Burnaby, BC, Burnaby Winter Club guy. Obviously, if you're from the Vancouver area and you know your way around the Burnaby area too, you would have seen everything. You would have seen Joe Sakic Way. You would hear all about Michael Bublé. You know about the Nuge as well. There's a lot that comes out of this side of the country, and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins was a first overall pick that just happened to be from this area too. The Nuge scored 100 points in 2022-2023, 37 goals and 67 assists. Sure, his production this year was not that great, 49 points in 78 games played, but you have to remember this guy absolutely comes alive in the playoffs every single year. He has always been hovering around a point per game in the postseason, even if his regular season production doesn't straddle in that same territory. The 100-point year was a total anomaly, I feel, but still, the Nuge was a point-per-game guy with 11 points in 12 games in the postseason that year. In fact, heading over to the Oilers in 2022-2023, you can see that Nuge, he was one of 3 100-point guys that the Oilers ended up having that season. That was the year that McDavid just decided to score 60 goals and just be an absolute monster himself. Hey, what a talented hockey player that young lad is. But let's go back over onto Canucks Army and read Rodgett's piece on which true top 6 centers the Vancouver Canucks can still trade for. There are some options here. There's a discussion on Marco Rossi and Mason McTavish. We have made our videos about these guys in the past, so I don't really think it's all too necessary to dive into them one more time. But let's scroll down and read about Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. 32 years old, 6'1", 192, $5.13 million AAV until 2029 with a no-move clause. The Nuge had 49 points in 78 games this previous season and a 55.0% Corsi. Okay, are we dreaming here? Maybe. Nugent-Hopkins signed what was a major hometown discount at the time to stay in Edmonton for the remainder of the decade, but he's really tanked the past couple of years, dropping down from 104 points to 67, and then all the way down to 49 last season, though he did rebound for 20 points in 22 playoff games. If the Oilers are seeking a shakeup and find themselves unable to part with a defender like Darnell Nurse or Matthias Ekholm, a forward who might make sense to deal is Nugent-Hopkins. It would certainly send a message to the Edmonton room. And if that came to pass, a place Nugent-Hopkins might reasonably waive his no-move clause for is his hometown-ish of Vancouver. Yeah, he's from Burnaby, folks. We could just say hometown discount. Big shout-out over to Joel Kravitz, by the way, for subscribing here to the channel live whilst we were recording this video. But Nuge is probably too cost-effective for the Oilers to seriously consider dealing, and we have to imagine they would look to avoid an intra-divisional trade anyway. I like how the article brings up Nuge's name. They say, yeah, there's a possibility that he might be able to waive, but then again, it concludes that the Oilers might not even be thinking about making some sort of a trade with Nugent-Hopkins and with Vancouver, of all teams. But if you wanted to dream about it, if you wanted to bring up what could be with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins as a second-line center in Vancouver, all you gotta do is just place him behind Elias Pettersson and have him as the second-line C, and you're golden. Honestly, if the Nuge finds himself a way to come to Vancouver, he would be almost a perfect fit, I would say, for what it is the Canucks are trying to build. Whether you have him playing with Evander Kane or you have him playing with anybody else, DeBrusk or somebody, the top six in Vancouver looking like that actually does look pretty strong, in my opinion. If you go over to the Vancouver Canucks and their line combinations, you can have Petey with DeBrusk and Besser, Kane with Nugent-Hopkins and Garland. Big shout out over to T-Sprog67 as well for subscribing to the YouTube channel while we are recording this video here. And then you could even think about Nils Höglander. Like, you could realistically put Höglander up on the first line with Pettersson, have DeBrusk down there on the second line with the Nuge, and then have Evander Kane as more of a rough and tough, rock'em sock'em third liner, energy forward with Kiefer Sherwood. The fact that you could have Kane with Sherwood as well on the third line, I think there's some really underrated goal scoring potential that you can bring up with each of these guys. Not even to mention the idea that Evander Kane and the Nuge might have some chemistry there too. If you're thinking about centers, I mean, if the Oilers want a little bit more of a cheaper guy going the other way, I think Teddy Blueger is a reasonable fit. Obviously, I'm not suggesting Blueger for Nugent-Hopkins 1-for-1. Vancouver would probably have to add there, but Teddy Blueger does have some value in the middle to bottom six of most NHL teams. Maybe the Oilers don't necessarily need that because they just signed Trent Frederick to that massive deal, but having these extra names, I mean, they just got Isaac Howard too, they got Mangiapane, that's a really good addition up front. The Nuge, third-line center projected right now, maybe he's not necessarily best utilized in a third-line center role. Maybe there's a chance for him to move on to bigger and better pastures, like helping out the Vancouver Canucks, for example. Although, I do think that the likelihood of this sort of a deal going down is very unlikely. I just wanted to bring it up because it was talked about here on Canucks Army, so if you're a Vancouver Canucks fan, I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Maybe it's like 10 years too late to be talking about a conversation like this, but do you think it's a reasonable idea to think about Ryan Nugent-Hopkins as a potential Vancouver Canuck? Is it realistic? Is it plausible? Is it possible? And what do you think the trade price could be? I'm suggesting something maybe Blueger plus a whole bunch of other assets, younger guys and picks maybe like that. Maybe that's enough to get it done, but of course, folks are going to be disagreeing about trade prices and trade proposals for as long as hockey discussion is relevant here. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. If you're an Oilers fan, if you're a Canucks fan, how do you think a Nugent-Hopkins trade would, could, or should shake out? Do you think Vancouver is a reasonable destination here? Let me know in the comment section all your opinions. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.